Thank you. Hello, Las Vegas. It's the first day of MWC. Seems like a pretty pretty good turnout. My name is Robby Hamblet. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Teal. My background was in eSim, so I'm going to talk a bit about how you can have your eSim and eat it too, which sounds like a pretty convoluted title. We have a literal cake here that if you guys want some cake after, we'll be serving it in the back. But what it means is that eSim is a word that gets thrown around. A lot of people offer it. At the end of the day, the solutions that people end up using, it doesn't always fulfill their dreams, right? It's an enterprise that hits that wall. It's not as compatible as they thought it was going to be. And this holds back cellular scale. So how can we make the eSim dreams come true? How can you be able to do eSim as you want to do it and still do it on a time and a budget that makes sense? So the agenda today is just common challenges that everybody sees when they're building a cellular solution. A bit of ideological discussion of what an eSim really should do. Talking about the different types of people that provide eSim technology, because that makes a very big difference in what the tech ends up accomplishing. Going into how you can do both. Having your eSim and eating it, using it and also getting it at the same time. And then a use case highlight and how you can actually switch. So stop me if you've heard this before, but telcos are complicated. And if you're building a product, it can take months, even years sometimes, depending on the product, just to ship that first SKU, that first product. And maybe you've got all of your nuts and bolts tightened, and you've got that device out there, and you got it set up, and the radio is on, and it's connecting to a carrier, and you're like, yes, we're done. But then you find out that the way that you got onto that network isn't prioritized. You're roaming onto that network. So you see more outages, and you see less throughput than your competition's seeing. Maybe you try to send it across the border, or somebody drives it in the back of their truck, and it's an eSIM, so it should work in Canada, right? But the subscription that came with it, the provider that gave you that eSIM, doesn't actually offer you any service in Canada, so now you got to start a whole nother project and integrate a Canadian operator partner. Maybe everything that comes tied to that eSIM is through one mobile core provider. Maybe it's coming from an MVNO or an MNO, and they don't give you any flexibility, so you have no redundancy if there's an outage. If, God forbid, a tower goes down or a packet gateway gets overloaded. Sunsets happen. We just went through it with 3G. 4G, people are starting to talk about it. It's like a ghost in the halls right now. I even want to talk about 5G sunsets with the move from from non-standalone networks to standalone networks. There are a lot of goodies that are hidden on the standalone 5G networks that are mobile cores that your SIM card today doesn't connect to because it was designed around a non-standalone, an IMSI-based solution versus a SUPI-based solution. So that's an upgrade. You built your device, you bought the right part, it came with all the 5G new radio bands and stuff, but the SIM card isn't holding up its end of the deal in being programmable. Complexity when you go beyond even that one network. Let's say you do have something that works with some measure of multi-network functionality. Now you're going to another country. Do you create an entirely different SKU to do Brazil, and now you have two different products? Do you now need to manufacture in India an entirely different component because of the regulations there? All these things can be blocked by the telco service provider that's actually giving you access to the network, the solution that they give you to get into their network. And the last thing that I'll add is cost control. So everybody gets on a contract typically with an operator or service provider. What happens when new technologies come out that push prices lower? Or what happens when you want to switch to a more optimal profile, like let's say fixed wireless instead of a per gigabyte plan? These are the kind of things that if you don't have a real eSIM technology platform, if you don't have programmability, yes, you're getting an eSIM, but you're not able to actually eat it like you want to. You can't consume it. So taking a step back into what eSIM is, so there's the plastic cards, very easy to plug and play, low risk if something goes wrong with it. Embeddable components are definitely preferred in terms of product simplification, but come with the risk that if you solder down a solution, you're stuck with it forever. So it better actually have a platform attached to it. And then the last bit is the QR codes that everybody is talking about, the activation strings that those translate into. That's SGP32, which I'm not going to get up here and say that we're all ready for SGP32. The GSMA is very clear that the device requirements are not finalized. Nobody can certify an EIM. If you build something with 32 today, you might think that you're getting something that you're not, because the standards will change and evolve between now and deployment readiness. So, brief history: SIM card invented in 1991, M2M spec released in 2016. This year, Teal became the first provider to offer all 3 US networks inside of one platform. You can imagine that it took us 7 years from the time the clock started on eSIM to when the carriers were comfortable enough with it and inside of one system like Teal, where you're actually able to move between each of those networks independently and the mobile cores that they provide. I would say SGP32 consumer for IoT, it's not going to take 7 years. It's not going to take 8 years. It's going to be a couple of years before the carriers figure out how their go-to-market aligns with the technical solutions that exist. And then consumer eSIM, everybody knows about the iPhone and how it switched out the physical card and went completely digital. But we're certainly moving to this more digital approach. There should be less orchestration beforehand on the physical components. Can the platforms actually back that up? So the 4 fundamentals of eSIM, I believe, are that it should be programmable. You shouldn't need multiple versions of different device SKUs. You shouldn't be like, what eSIM do I order from this company? There should only be one, right? It should be actually able to do everything you want. You know, there might be a direct-to-business unit at a carrier, and there might be a wholesale business unit at a carrier, and there might be a channel business unit at a carrier selling 3 different SIM cards. They might all be called eSIM, right? But how can it be programmable so you can actually switch between those, switch between your commercials, your customers' commercials, the full freedom? I mean, this is what eSIM is about. It's about freedom, which sounds very American, but I'm up here talking about the first North American eSIM platform. But availability, delivering full performance, low latency. It's not about just getting access to the radio network. A lot of people think about the RAN. They don't think about how many packet gateways they're getting behind that connection. They're not thinking about what latency performance they're getting with that subscription. If you're just getting on and using, a KPN or an EU provider IMSI inside of the United States, the performance is going to be very different than if you're using an IMSI and a network identity from that carrier. So that's very important. Full availability of the networks. Redundancy, you don't want to be stuck in one kind of wholesaler multi-IMSI solution where it's 5 different identities all with the same infrastructure, right? You're not actually having any redundancy there because all the packet gateways are point to the same place. Upgradability, you don't want to get locked into your solution. I see so many devices not fulfill their potential because they bought equipment with 5G bands that the subscription isn't enabling. And if you actually want to do that, you got to swap the SIM, or even they call it an eSIM. You got to swap the eSIM out. There's 3 different specs I already kind of talked about. Some very high-level benefits of each one is that SGP02 is push-based, which means you have a remote platform to send and control things remotely. SGP22 is pull-based. It's very easy on your phone to land at an airport and scan a QR code off of a pamphlet and get access to a carrier that way. But SGP32, very similar to 22 in that it's a pull-based mechanism, but it's simplifying the management of multiple carriers from 02. So where a lot of solutions have gotten tripped up is that 02 comes stamped with an SMSR. That's the only subscription manager that can modify the credentials that live inside that device, and that then is the boss of where your device ends up going. So in 32, there's a little bit more flexibility. It's a little bit further away. So those different solutions, the cards, the chips, the technologies behind them, the 02, the 22, the 32, you can get them from different places, which is something I've been talking about this whole time. You can get an MNO eSIM, right? You can get Verizon Global eSIM. There's not going to be T-Mobile or AT&T on it. Does that really fulfill eSIM for your business? Is that really what you wanted to do with eSIM when you use that word eSIM? I think that it's all about freedom. It's all about programmability, that technology. An MNO eSIM is going to provide you one really good direct network. It's going to provide you technology that's not theirs. It's been rented from one of the SIM technology vendors. And it's going to rely on that carrier's relationships internationally, right? So there are rules to how you use that kind of eSIM in line with the have your cake and eat it too, that you'd probably want to actually avoid. MVNO, very similar thing. I mean, if it's a supplier of the eSIM that is not actually a technology provider, they're writing business rules on how you use that technology for their benefit. And there's going to be many virtualized networks, lots of wholesale agreements. The technology is still rented or leased because they're not developing it themselves. And there's going to be this over-reliance on brokered roaming relationships. The last bit is like the pure technology, right? This is what I had experience with before starting Teal. It's a SIM provider eSIM. So this is where you get to define your own project. My experience was with General Motors and with Daimler and building these eSIM technology solutions where the enterprise got to decide what carriers plugged into it. The problem with that model is that it's very time consuming and very expensive. If you ask even the carriers, it takes 12 months ideally from contract to shipping the actual unit to have a direct relationship between that enterprise, the profile that telco wants to give that enterprise, and then the final ultimate solution. So you have that flexibility to define your own projects, but you don't actually get to do it on a time frame that makes any sense. You're now going it alone, so to speak. So you've bought this platform, you got to plug all these carriers into it. You are using direct eSIM technology, so you get to control, you get to actually eat your eSIM at the end of the day, but you don't necessarily have it on a time scale that makes any sense. So true eSIM is a complete strategy. It's how you can have your eSIM and eat it too. Teal is uniquely positioned. Obviously, this is a sales pitch. We're here at a conference. But programmability, profile swapping is very important. You got to be able to change when you want to. Direct credentials are important. It's not running through infrastructure that we're providing. It's running directly inside of those mobile carriers. We provide built-in connectivity. So if you just want, the fastest path to a direct T-Mobile profile, we can get you that. If you want to bring your own commercials and name your price with T-Mobile, we can do that too. Many of our carriers have a partnership with Teal where the connectivity is their game and the eSIM is our game, right? And we're in it for the enterprise to have that ultimate solution, the eSIM that they can buy today and eat today without having to do all these different projects. We're GSMA compliant and highly secure. So like I talked about, we're the first and only North American-based company to certify their own platform for eSIM. So you can go on the SAS UP website and look us up. You can build something that's future-proof. It's something that's actually programmable. So something cool, like an actual customer example would be Starship. So Starship went from 5 different telco providers because they are an autonomous delivery drone. They have cameras. They need to be able to roll around on the floor and get access to really good connectivity, good quality connectivity. They used to do a site survey and then decide, what's the right mobile core for this market? What's the right mobile core for this campus? With Teal, they were able to change the actual profile dynamically. So switch between AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile and get access to their direct mobile cores, get IP addresses actually from those operators. And we were able to do things in a timeline that was immediate, right? They didn't have to build their own integrations with Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T. They were able to get access to all of that now. So that's a really awesome use case. Our belief is that everything should be interoperable. These machine data networks are only getting bigger. The networks should be as accessible to solution providers. That's the enterprise that's building these devices as apps. So we talk about network apps, and that's the distinction between something that might be fixed wireless versus something designed for a BVLOS drone versus something that's designed for Cat-M, NB-IoT, something like that. These should all be plug and play. These all should be buttons that you press and that the network provider should be given the tools to build those more complete solutions so they can publish them without complicating the end solution that the customer's buying. They don't want to switch out a SIM card at the very end once they're ready to deploy, and then they find out it doesn't work in Canada. So thank you guys for your attention. Like I said, there's going to be cake. We have it's all like written out like in teal and sprinkles and stuff. It's not like keto for sure, but there is cake. So here's how you can get in touch with us. We're based in Seattle. Thank you everyone for your time.